It certainly has been quite the week for this video game industry, but first of all, Ghost of Tsushima is enjoying great success. It's been reported by PlayStation that they have sold 2.4 million copies in the first 3 days, becoming the fastest new selling IP for them, a huge victory for Sucker Punch Productions, and hopefully this means we're going to see more titles like this in the future, which I think a lot of people right now are just looking for an experience to get lost into, and that's exactly what Ghost of Tsushima represents. And as I've said on Twitter in recent days, this game isn't very original with its design. It features elements that you've probably seen in a boatload of other open world games, which in a lot of cases has been done better. But what this game does have is a lot of fun and a lot of heart, and it also does a great job at honoring Japanese culture, and right now it's been said that Japanese critics are raving about this experience. In Japan it's been said that the demand is outweighing the supply, and even on the always reliable Metacritic it's been said that this is the highest rated PlayStation exclusive right now. So definitely a huge victory, huge win for PlayStation and Sucker Punch, much deserved. But in some other news, flipping it around to Microsoft, they had their huge Xbox game showcase in recent days, and as most of you know, I streamed it. We had a lot of fun talking about the reveal, and there were some great announcements, but overall I just found it fine. Obviously we had Halo Infinite revealed, which looks fine for now. I gotta wait to see more about that. It's been memed to death already. And then we got the big announcement for Fable, some more CGI trailers, because why not? Although I will add, as I've said multiple times over the years, I'm just tired of CGI trailers. Just show the actual game, whether that be gameplay or in-game footage, something actually of the game. Let's not mislead people into expecting something differently. But really the highlight from this showcase, and the company that I guess you could say stole the show, was Obsidian Entertainment, Microsoft's probably their best purchase in a very long time. Obsidian came out with some huge surprises. They first announced the first of 2 story DLCs for The Outer Worlds, a game that I really did enjoy, and it's not a AAA experience. I think people get that confused because it did not have a huge budget. It was limited, and Obsidian did the best that they could with that, and they created something that I really did enjoy, and now it's being expanded upon with hopefully some great story DLC. Then probably the funniest moment of this entire event was when Obsidian made a joke about Cyberpunk 2077 with their survival title Grounded, in which they said if you're excited for the most anticipated game of the year, well, that wait is going to have to wait a little bit longer for Cyberpunk because this isn't that. It was just a funny moment that even got a chuckle out of myself included. Also, this is definitely in line with the humor that we all know and love from Obsidian over the years. But the biggest shock, the biggest surprise, which I'm just extremely excited for, and that is Obsidian doing something that very much probably is making Bethesda and Todd Howard sweat a little bit, and that is Obsidian entering the game, taking their Pillars of Eternity franchise and going first-person fantasy RPG. As everybody was saying on Twitter, this is Obsidian making their very own Skyrim after making their very own space RPG. And yeah, the future of Obsidian is really exciting just because of the fact that they have unlimited funding, they got Microsoft behind them, and they really can do a lot of really cool things in the future. This is one of the best things Microsoft has done. Probably their best thing is still Game Pass, which is a win for everybody, and it's the most pro-consumer thing throughout this entire gaming industry. But regardless, hopefully Avowed, hopefully Fable, these are games that really can define the next generation for Microsoft. And what's even better is that these games will be available on Game Pass day one. But nonetheless, let's move on to the main subjects of this video. We're going to be discussing Rockstar Games' Red Dead Online, which has had some very interesting protests the last few weeks, but there has been some very good news that has come about in the last couple of days. But I really just want to touch on my thoughts on Red Dead because this is a game that made up my channel for a couple of years, and I haven't really talked about Red Dead Online in a long time, and I have quite a bit of thoughts. But in addition to that, we're also going to be talking about the chaos that is just continuing with Ubisoft. It feels like every day there's just something disgusting coming out from this company, and yeah, one of these companies that just loves to pretend that they're super progressive, they push diversity, they don't care about any of that. And we're going to be talking further details about the madness going on within that company, in which the executives are horrible human beings. I mean, it's just simple as that. And then of course we are going to be touching on Cyberpunk 2077, in which we have CD Projekt Red once again throwing some shade, or at least a nice little roasted Electronic Arts, much deserved in my opinion. But of course, this is just the case with Cyberpunk, but there's outrage once again surrounding comments coming from CDPR's lead quest designer, who pretty much said that they're not going to be forcing an agenda or including reactionary politics, and it makes complete sense. We're going to be breaking that down. But as usual, before we proceed forward, if you do go on to enjoy this content and want to show your support for more videos like like this, please consider hitting that like button, subscribing for more, and turning notifications on so you do not miss out on any new content. As I've said in recent days, I have some Cyberpunk inspired merchandise on my store if you want to check that out. There will be a link in the description below, and as always, you can support the channel by checking out my Patreon and maybe backing it if you have a couple of extra dollars to throw at me. But finally, let's touch on Red Dead Online. This has been quite the experience the last couple of, I think, years. It's just, I really have been disappointed with what Rockstar Games did here, just because I felt like this was the perfect opportunity to deliver some single player DLC. Yes, I'm still bitter over the fact that they did not go that route, and I know some people are still holding on to hope that Rockstar is going to change their mind, but that ain't happening. It's all about the money, and online multiplayer is a lot cheaper to produce, and it's a lot more profitable, which is why a lot of companies don't do single player expansions anymore. That's especially why I like supporting companies like Obsidian Entertainment, who continue to support stuff like that, and of course CD Projekt Red, who has already outlined plans for story DLC for Cyberpunk 2077. Now, with Red Dead Online, there's been a lot of protests and a lot of outrage the last number of months because there's just been no communication from Rockstar on the future of this online. A lot of people felt like they just completely abandoned it, but that's not the case. I know some people are probably typing in the comments like, no, there's an update. Yes, I'm aware of that. We're going to touch on that in a second. But what has been happening in Red Dead Online were some very interesting protests in which Red Dead Online fans were dressing up as clowns to protest Rockstar. This is an article coming from Polygon, which noted that Red Dead Online fans note that it's been nearly a year since Rockstar has meaningfully updated the open world MMO, which has got people feeling exasperated by content drought. But rather than just complaining about it, the cowboys of Red Dead Online staged a protest of sorts. And I don't really need to continue reading off the rest of this Polygon article, because if we go to the Red Dead Online subreddit, this is what was happening. People literally dressing up as clowns. And these were some of the top upvoted posts on the Red Dead Online subreddit. You have somebody saying Red Dead Clown, another person saying, seriously though, me and the boys playing Red Dead Online. And yeah, it's a very creative way. You don't see this coming from any other communities that are very angry about the lack of content or the lack of communication and issues with the overall experience like Fallout and Anthem. You ain't seeing that. But with Red Dead, it's very different. Although I should acknowledge that it's not always sunshine and peaches. I think I just made that up. I think you get the point, though. What I was trying to say was that it's not always happiness. This is a very nice way of going about frustration, and some people have indeed gone to Rockstar employees' Twitter profiles, their personal accounts, sending nasty and horrifying messages to them. Maybe this comes off as a surprise, hopefully it does not, but all this accomplishes is making people who send these disturbing type of messages to developers, well, they look like the true moronic clowns. Honk honk. But pivoting back to the main subject that we were discussing, which is Red Dead 2 Online, as I said before in the game's subreddit, for the last couple of weeks and months, players have been calling themselves clowns for continuing to support this live service. But finally, I guess it paid off for all these clowns, because Rockstar Games did announce the next update, taking to their newswire saying, with both games playing home to more players than ever before in recent months, we know the community has been awaiting news of any updates for Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead Online. We're happy to share that both games will receive exciting new updates in the weeks ahead. For Red Dead Online, though, players can expect a massive new update to arrive Tuesday, July 28th, featuring a new frontier pursuit that will introduce players to the secrets of naturalism. As part of an all-new role plus a new outlaw pass, tons of community-requested features and fixes, and they continue just acknowledging that there's more content to come, and I guess that's good, but I definitely know in the coming months you're just going to continue to see people upset with the drought. This is just how it's always been with Grand Theft Auto Online, and the cycle continues. But I will say that I still am disappointed with this overall online live service, just because I kind of expected more, just because of the high quality content that was in the single player of Red Dead Redemption 2. I always felt that there was an opportunity to expand this further, and maybe that is something planned down the road, like maybe giving a Nuevo Paraíso expansion. That's something that I wanted to see with story DLC, but that's probably never going to happen. Regardless, my overall opinion on Red Dead 2 Online still hasn't really changed since the beta days. I will say that this has definitely improved. Like, there's some decent quality story content in the online, but again, it just pales in comparison to Red Dead Redemption 2's phenomenal story and characters. And it's just so disappointing that they never properly utilize some of these characters with standalone single-player expansions, maybe something with Sadie Adler or Charles Smith. As Rockstar Games said late last year in September 2019, in an interview with VG247, Rockstar said that we're 100% focused on the online right now because, like I said, there's just so much to do, and we're just hoping to bring everything that a player can love about single-player into the online world and flesh it out. Which to that, I still have the same answer that I had back in September of 2019, and it's why not just expand on this with a proper story DLC or standalone DLC expansion? But I know the answer to that, and that's what I mentioned earlier, and it's not as profitable going that route, unfortunately. Anyway, continuing on to our next news story, and that is Ubisoft. And my god, is this company a mess, and their executives are just horrible human beings. I said this earlier, but it really is true. Every single day there is a new story coming out about Ubisoft's culture, which is just horrifying. Everything about Ubisoft is a lie, everything that they present themselves as is a lie, and right now a lot of their executives just continue to quit. Like I saw a new PR manager resigned, and it's been a mess, it really has. But one of the most startling revelations to come out is how this culture has unfortunately impacted game design. Now we have this article coming from Paul Tassi at Forbes, and he outlines what specifically was outlined in Jason Schreier's article coming from Bloomberg. It's paywalled, that's just how Bloomberg operates, but here it goes. It says that this time Jason Schreier sets his sights at Ubisoft, a company that has recently begun to clean house after many public allegations of workplace harassment and abuse by its top brass, including its all-powerful creative head Serge Hascott. But Schreier's story describes how Ubisoft knew about all sorts of bad behavior in the company for years and took little action until very recently. Until it all went public, because this is just how these big companies operate. They don't care about these situations until the public finds out about it, and then it's panic mode. The worst stuff is obviously how Ubisoft mistreated its employees, particularly women, and yet a culture of pervaded into its games as well, most notably Assassin's Creed. Yes, this is the very interesting thing. The story describes how 3 different Assassin's Creed games sidelined their female characters at the request of Ubisoft creative heads and marketing teams. So this is the interesting revelation that is coming from Jason Schreier's piece in Bloomberg, and it's that the horrible culture at Ubisoft impacted game design because Ubisoft executives believe that women don't sell. I guess they don't know Tomb Raider, I guess they don't know Horizon Zero Dawn, and I understand the other perspective that I know some of you are probably thinking, and it's that making a male-focused Assassin's Creed game is more likely to sell better no matter the quality, and that very much is probably true to an extent based on market research. It's the safe choice that has been made in the past, but there is also some accounts coming from former employees that paint the picture that no, these guys just didn't want to make a female-focused game because of who they are and what they think. I mean, for Christ's sake, Serge Hascott said that he wants less linear narratives and cutscenes in games. This was an interview that was done a couple of years back, and that's why the overall quality, I think, of a lot of these Ubisoft games has gone down. These creative heads look at a game like The Witcher 3 and just try to copy every single element of it instead of innovating themselves, and unfortunately that's what Assassin's Creed has become what it is today. It's just a shell of what it used to be. But anyway, getting back to it, these are the 3 Assassin's Creed games that were affected. In Assassin's Creed Syndicate, Jacob and Evie Fry were supposed to have equal time in the story, but Jacob went on to dominate most of the game in its marketing. In Assassin's Creed Origins, the original plan was to kill off Bayek early and have his wife Aya take over, but in the end that did not happen and her role was significantly reduced, which is just so disappointing because I could tell that Aya could have been a very interesting and compelling character, but she was kind of just sidestepped it for the most part for Bayek's story. And I know a lot of people really did like Bayek, but remember, that's because the game's story was changed up to fit for him because of what executives at the top felt about the original design plan. And now finally we have Assassin's Creed Odyssey. It was said that Cassandra was supposed to be the only playable lead in the game according to 4 people who worked on the game, but the idea was rejected, and the concept of sibling choice between Alexios and Cassandra is what made its way into the final game. And then Paul Tassi of Forbes continues, acknowledging or noting that Ubisoft could have taken that risk with Cassandra, making a female-only lead in their Assassin's Creed franchise, but they didn't, citing the extremely outdated idea that women women leading games don't sell. Something, again, what I mentioned earlier, that Lara Croft, Ellie, and Aloy, it's just not true. The logic is circular. More male leading games sell well because more male leading games are made, and players have been trained to expect male leads, or at least the choice of one, for decades, now in 95% of major titles, which is exactly what probably some of these Ubisoft executives were thinking. The easier route is just going with a male lead protagonist, not taking the chance with a female lead, which is indeed disappointing, and it just shows that Ubisoft doesn't have faith in their creative teams. The last two Assassin's Creed games could have been part of attempting to break the trend, but they were literally not allowed to by upper management and marketing. That's awful, and it is, but this is just what Ubisoft is, a fake progressive company that loves to lie about its progressive elements and the diversity that you often see marketed on all of their games. And there was actually an account that came from a former employee who took to Twitter saying, "I was in the Montreal studio in Assassin's Creed 2 to 10 Origins, and Ubisoft execs said women don't sell every single time. I am in awe of the Ubisoft Quebec staff who fought teeth and claws to get Evie and later Cassandra to even exist. Know that before them, many battles were lost." Which, it's really interesting how all of this just went under the radar up until now, in which it just exploded with all of these allegations. I just really don't know how Ubisoft got away with this culture. But moving along, at Ubisoft's recent conference call, there was some interesting conversations or dialogue that happened between Ubisoft executives with their investors. And this is Jason Schreier reporting. He says, "Wow, someone asked Ubisoft's CEO if he knew the extent of what was happening. Question dodged. Each time we've been made aware of misconduct, we made tough decisions. It has now become clear that certain individuals betrayed the trust I placed in them." Which, I think that there's really two reactions that you can have to a statement like this. And it's that Ubisoft's CEO is either incompetent or he just doesn't pay attention or care about his actual business, because the fact that there's hundreds of allegations coming out, some of the most horrific things I've ever heard, unbelievable that this went under the radar for so long, and it just makes Ubisoft look horrible. Now, in another tweet coming from Jason Schreier, it was also said by Ubisoft CFO Frederic Dugois. He gave a brief speech touting the diverse characters in Ubisoft games, presumably a response to his reporting from Bloomberg. "We have represented diversity in a meaningful way in our games," he said, mentioning Jade and Beyond Good and Evil, and Ash and Rainbow Six Siege. And yeah, using a video game character that came out in 2003 to try and make the point that you guys are all for diversity is just a very big yikes for me. Ubisoft just really does not know how to handle this because they are horribly equipped. They love to pretend who they actually are not. But again, as I said earlier, this Bloomberg piece covers a lot more. Like, as The Verge notes, current and former staffers apparently said that other employees made repeated claims to HR for years, and they were ignored. They described Ubisoft as a boys' club where employees like Hascott would hold business meetings at adult clubs. Women shared stories of managers telling them to smile more and making grossly inappropriate comments about their bodies, and colleagues who sent them very bad messages and videos. Even more bizarre, it was said that executives that had claims made against them, they were pretty much ignored because these same executives were then given promotions, which is just... Ubisoft is a very fake company. That's the best way to put it, and what I will go back to is the women don't sell trope. It's just not true. We all know that. Everybody watching this video knows that's not true. Make a quality single-player story-focused experience with a female lead like Aloy in Horizon Zero Dawn, and guess what? You're going to have strong sales. Ubisoft executives are just clueless, and that's not something that's just coming to me right now. We've seen this in the past with their writing and their creativity, especially with their main antagonist in the Far Cry franchise. For Christ's sake, they've been trying to repeat Voss for I don't know how many games since Far Cry 3, and at this point it's just gotten annoying, and I hope that's not something that is the case with Far Cry 6, but we'll have to see. Now, I will say a game like Far Cry 5 and Far Cry New Dawn, they would have been drastically improved with any type of lead, maybe a female lead. That's something that would have been drastically better than the pick your body and I guess play as this random character that doesn't have any dialogue options and has no identity or no contribution really to the story except for characters just talking to you. And yeah, I just so many lost opportunities with these games. Great settings, but the characters, the writing's been disastrous. And hopefully with these executives now no longer being at the company, hopefully we get some better stories, and we'll have to see. But for now, what I can say for sure is women don't sell. That's a blatant lie, and Ubisoft is a company that has a lot of problems that they definitely have to solve. Next though, we finally move on to Cyberpunk 2077, one of the most anticipated games of the year, and yeah, there's been a lot of conversation surrounding this game for the last couple of years, some good, some bad, and a lot of takes that my eyes pop out of my head, but one that actually got me laughing was some of the tweets that they gave about EA's FIFA franchise. So we have this article coming from GameByte, which mentions that the Cyberpunk team has been very active on social media, and one fan actually responded saying about certain concept art related to Cyberpunk 2077, in which we have a building which looks very corporate. I guess that's the best way to say it in the future. Somebody saying, is that last building EA's headquarters in 2077? And the mad lads at Projekt Red did respond to this tweet saying, yes, and if you zoom in closer, you can even see concept art from FIFA 78. It's said to be the best FIFA ever, and yeah, ooh, what a sweet little roast that is. The EA FIFA franchise has just been a copy and paste mess for the last, I don't know how many years, and in some cases, they literally just copy and paste many of these assets, and they got caught with Madden, I believe, last year, and even the year before then, and I believe that was also the same case with the 2K franchise, but that comes from Take-Two Interactive. But I think I'm trying to say is that these sports franchises definitely love to copy and paste and recycle lots of content and then sell it for $60. And yeah, CD Projekt Red throwing some sweet shade at Electronic Arts' FIFA franchise, just beautiful. Now this thread would continue as somebody else would tweet, FIFA 78 includes customizable that body part, and the Cyberpunk 2077 official account followed up saying if there is only one type of that body part, pre-order canceled, and you might expect this, but the Cyberpunk account experienced some backlash for this tweet. You had some people responding saying, you sure CDPR is all about avoiding conflict? This post/joke looks like CDPR is inviting conflict, though it does sound like it was more about making the majority feel comfortable to not anger them with diversity. Oh, people with these takes. I swear people get upset about everything nowadays. You had somebody else quote tweeting this saying, they really do just keep messing up. Somebody saying they're going to pirate the game now because of this. Another person saying that CDPR is playing into the worst people, and I could go on and on with these takes, but the thing is nowadays, jokes, they're just not acceptable. That's just literally how it is. And taking a quick sidestep since we are on the subject of EA's FIFA franchise, here is the cover art, or the cover for FIFA 21, which looks, I don't know, just screams lazy to me. Seems like EA had an intern open up Microsoft Paint, drop some images of the cover star, and then they called it a day, which actually this kind of perfectly captures the quality of EA sports games in present day, which is laughable. Like, I'm certain that an EA executive thinks that this looks fresh and clean, but no, it just looks pretty ugly and lazy. And at the same time, I'm trying to think why they didn't invest more into their cover, but I mean, it's not like they're trying to save money, unless EA's Andrew Wilson wants to buy another yacht, and maybe they're directing funds away from that, but hey, that's just a theory. Finally though, since we're already talking about Cyberpunk 2077 outrage, let's talk about the most outrageous thing, which has some people upset, but I feel it's divisive but also misguided. Some people just really do not understand what CDPR is trying to properly say about politics in Cyberpunk 2077, so I want to break this down in detail because there's just so much misinformation out there, and hopefully this gives you a better understanding of what CD Projekt Red is actually saying about. So this is an article coming from WCCF Tech. This is what's been cited often. These comments coming from a CD Projekt Red developer recently, and the title of this article says Cyberpunk 2077 developer on BLM influences. Ours is a work of art, not a political statement. And I fact-checked this article because this is a Google translation for the most part. The original origin of this interview isn't WCCF Tech. It's actually a Polish interview coming from a Polish website. And why that is important is because a lot of quotes and stuff that's been said by Polish people in the past has been mistranslated. Actually, regarding Cyberpunk 2077, there was some outrage surrounding religion early on because of a quote that was mistranslated, in which on a forum it was said that CD Projekt Red says that they will not avoid any subject, even if they may offend the sensitivity of some. This included subjects like Christianity. That was fake news. That was a mistranslation, and that's why I definitely felt like this needed to be checked a few times, and for the most part, WCCF Tech's translation seems to be mostly accurate. accurate. So now, diving into this article, it first starts off saying the source material of Cyberpunk 2077 is known to be a critique of sorts to issues of the contemporary society, such as inequity, and following the wave of protests in the United States of America, Polish website Spider's Web asked Cyberpunk 2077 quest designer Paweł Sasko whether the current movement that's going on in the United States will it foster any changes at all in the upcoming game, chiefly in quests. And this is his lengthy response. He says the important point is that we already have a recorded game at this stage, actually for a long time. This is the last stage in which we do not change anything in the story we are telling. We add nothing or remove anything. These events, as you noticed yourself, took place very recently. The second point is, for us, Cyberpunk 2077 and The Witcher are games that show our philosophy as a studio. The game we are working on is an entertainment medium to a large extent, but for us it's also an art, a work that shows our vision. It's also difficult for me to imagine that the events that would have had to happen for us to suddenly find that we are changing or moving something in order not to touch any specific element. So what he's trying to push back on is reactionary politics. That's not happening here. Anyway, I think you saw elements in the game that touch it, so you could find out for yourself. For me, the most important thing is that our game is not a political statement or a political thesis, and this is the specific sentence that has caused some uproar. And the big point that needs to be mentioned about this is that he's not talking specifically about not having any politics in the game. That's what a lot of games journals, I get annoyed when they do this, because they try saying, oh, the game's going to be very boring now if there's no politics, and then they bring up other games like BioShock and Fallout. Yes, they have politics in it, but what people get upset about, and yes, what a lot of audiences get annoyed about, is forced agendas, as we've seen in some games like Battlefield 5, and that's what people are talking about. And they're not talking specifically about politics, like they're just not wanting to see left versus right nonsense. And yes, some games have had that and some games have not, and some developers and some journalists have actually attacked games like Far Cry 5 for not going that far, which is, it's mind-boggling to me. But anyway, let's finish off this quote and then we'll talk about it a little bit more. He says, "For me and my team, Cyberpunk 2077 is a work of art, and I will always stick to it. I always say to my designers, I don't feel like I'm producing something, I feel more like I'm painting a picture or making music, stories, movies. This is art for me, and art is the stories we tell the player, and this is the most important thing for us. As a studio, we're composed of different people who have different approaches to political, religious, spiritual, and internal life. Also when it comes to orientations or political sympathies. As a studio, we always try to cultivate openness and approach it in such a way that everyone can have a say, that each of these shades can be represented, as long as it is, of course, within the law and reason, so that each player can find here something for everyone and find answers for your own questions." So you probably are able to infer from my own reaction or my tone while reading this quote that I actually find it not too surprising, and I actually find it perfectly reasonable, because I understand what this CD Projekt Red developer was trying to convey. And it's actually something that Mike Pondsmith, the Cyberpunk creator himself, was saying last year in an interview with VGC, in which he said that Cyberpunk 2077 is inherently political. He said that everything is political. He said that the setting of Cyberpunk is a cautionary tale about the confluence of technology, power, and responsibility. And he further added that Cyberpunk is inherently political, but not in the commonly considered sense of left and right or conservative and liberal. Everything is political. Human beings are political. First we got food, then we got working girls and guys, then we got politics, and then we might have gotten politics before working girls/guys, but I'm not sure. Basically, it's all political, but a big part of what Cyberpunk talks about is the disparities of power and how technology readdresses that. And then about Cyberpunk 2077, he says, a lot of 2077 is about that push between people who want to gain power from the corporations and other groups, and the people who have had a taste of their own freedom and are not going to go along with this. So right now, Talsorian is running The Empire Strikes Back, while 2077 is essentially a Return of the Jedi or beyond even. So it's quite clear what Mike Pondsmith was saying, and it's pretty in line with what this CD Projekt Red developer was saying. It's that Cyberpunk 2077 is, yes, going to include politics, which I don't think anybody has a problem with. But what Cyberpunk 2077 definitely will not include is reactionary politics. So things going on right now, Cyberpunk 2077 isn't going out of their way to address it. They already have a vision, they already have a narrative that they want to tell. They're not going to change it just to make people happy. And I think that's what CDPR and what Mike Pondsmith have been saying for a while now. And I don't know why this is too surprising to hear right now, but for some reason it is. Cyberpunk 2077 is going to handle some very serious subjects. We've already seen that in some of the ESRB ratings with detailed accounts of, yes, some very horrific things that are going to happen in this game that, yes, relate to the real world, real world politics, but you're not going to be beat over the head with, ha ha ha, let's talk about left versus right no, that doesn't happen. It almost never happens in video games, period, anyway, because it's bad for business, and it's not going to happen here. And that's all what CD Projekt Red was saying, and I perfectly understand it, and I think most of you understand it as well. If anything, and what's actually pretty interesting, is Cyberpunk 2077 probably explaining the universe and how governments are powerless, with corporations in the dark future having full control over everything, which yes, is relevant to our current society and how things are going. As Mike Pondsmith has said, the Cyberpunk franchise is a warning, not an aspiration. But as I said before, there's just a lot of mistranslation surrounding Cyberpunk, this entire franchise. Like, I commonly see this quote thrown around. This isn't something that was written by Mike Pondsmith. It's not even included in Cyberpunk 2020, the tabletop RPG. It's included in the Neo Tribe's Cyberpunk sourcebook written by somebody else, Ross Wynn. Just a lot of misinformation over the years, and what I can say is that Cyberpunk 2077 is hopefully releasing in just about over 3 months, and I'm really happy for this release. I just want to get it out. It's kind of like Red Dead Redemption 2, there's just so many dumb takes that come, and I just want the game to finally release, let people play it, and let's enjoy it for ourselves, because for now, up until release, these takes are going to continue, and we'll continue to talk about it if we have to, but for now, I'm going to leave you guys with this huge question. What do you make of Cyberpunk 2077? What do you think about politics and gaming? How do you feel about it, and what is your take on the other subjects that we talked about in this video? Anyway, thank you for watching. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, but thank you for watching. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this video or if you found any informative value, and make sure to follow my other social media accounts for updates on new videos. Links are always down in the description below. I'm most active on Twitter, giving opinions on news that I do not always get into video form, so do make sure to follow me over there. Also check out my Discord for all sorts of discussion on games, and again, thank you for joining. Consider subscribing for more videos like this, and I'll see you later.